Good afternoon, everyone. Before we get started, I am going to ask that everybody adjust their Zoom name to reflect who they are. We need a first name and a last name and who you're representing, whether that be a committee member or you're representing the applicant or the candidate. We just need to identify everybody in the room. So I'll just give everybody a minute to change their names. If you're unable to change your name, please let me know and I can do that for you. I'm just going to do a quick attendance check to make sure we have quorum of our committee members. Great. I see that everyone has changed their name. Perfect. We do have quorum, so we can go ahead and get started. I'm calling this meeting to order of the meeting of the Compliance Audit Committee of August 1st to order at 4:02. This is a meeting of the Municipal Election Compliance Audit Committee for the purpose of considering a request for a compliance audit in accordance with Section 88.33 of the Municipal Elections Act 1996 as amended. My name is Jessica Warren. I am the Council Committee Services Coordinator with the Town of Oakville. Because this is the first meeting of the Compliance Audit Committee for the town for this term of council, a chair has not yet been selected. I will be temporarily presiding over this meeting until a chair has been selected. As of now, I don't believe we are still missing one committee member, but I think they're looking at joining. So as of now, there are no regrets. In addition to the committee members present, legal counsel for the committee is also in attendance, and that's John Pappas from Airden Borellis LLP. He is in the boardroom at Town Hall, along with our manager of elections and our town clerk. To proceed with our agenda, we do need to select a chair for this meeting. Are there any nominations for the position of chair for this meeting? Yes, Evan.
I will volunteer to take on the post of chair.
Happy to second.
Okay, so I just need someone to move that motion. Who wants to? I can't have Evan move himself as the chair, so if somebody wants to move that for him,
I can
Zachary.
move that. Sorry about that. Sorry.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks.
I can second it, Melissa.
Okay. Sorry, just bear with me while I write this down. Perfect. So the motion is moved by Zachary and seconded by Melissa that Evan Reed be appointed as chair for the August 1st, 2023 meeting of the Compliance Audit Committee. I believe this will hold as chair for the rest of the term, should there be any other meetings. Can I get a vote for all in favor of that with all the committee members? Great. So that's carried. I just want to quickly ask that whoever is in the meeting as admin trust law, that they identify themselves by turning their camera on and letting us know who they are so we can rename them. Whoever's listed as admin trust law, can you hear me?
Hi there. Yeah, we can hear you, but we cannot change the name.
Okay, I can probably do that for you. Can you please just identify who you are?
Yes, one.
Your name? Hi there. Can I get your name?
Yes. So, my name is Anitra. I'm just the observant here.
Sorry, your name is.
Anitra,
Can you spell that?
Anitra.
And are you representing either of the parties involved?
No.
Okay, then I'm going to ask that you leave the meeting and just watch via live stream on oakville.ca. The only people we can have as part of the meeting are actual participants, but members of the public are welcome to observe on oakville.ca and our YouTube channel.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, sorry, everyone. So, Evan, am I clear that you have a copy of the script?
That's correct, I do,
The
yes.
chair script? Okay, great. So I will hand everything over to you now.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the first meeting of the Joint Compliance Audit Committee for the town of Oakville. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest or other conflicts of interest among the members of the committee? Okay, please make a note that there were no declarations of interest, please. I'd also like to take the opportunity for the members of the committee to introduce themselves. I'll start myself and then I will call each member one at a time. Just a brief introduction. My name is Evan Reed and I am a resident of the town of Halton Hills. Next, can I have Karen, please?
My name is Karen Landry and I'm a resident of the Laura.
Thank you. Melissa?
My name's Melissa Colson. I'm a resident of Milton.
Thank you. Ryan?
Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm a resident of Oakville. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, can I have Zachary, please?
Hi, Zach Spicer. I'm a resident of Hamilton.
Thank you. Amrita?
Hi, good evening. My name is Amrita Sidhu. I'm a resident of Oakville.
And Camille, I believe you're the last one.
Hi, my name is Camille Glover, and I'm a resident of town of Oakville.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So the purpose of this meeting of the Municipal Elections Compliance Audit Committee is for the committee to consider an application for a compliance audit of the 2022 regular municipal election campaign finances of candidate Nav Nanda, outlined on the report, which is before you as item 4.1 on the agenda. In addition, additional documentation received from the applicant and candidate within the required time frames listed as items 4.1.1, 4.1.2, and 4.1.3 on the revised agenda. For the benefit of those in attendance, in accordance with the committee's administrative practices and procedures, the procedures to be followed in the committee's consideration of the application are as follows. 1, the applicant and the candidate will be asked to identify themselves and whether they will be represented by an agent. 2, the applicant or agent may address the committee for no longer than 5 minutes, and the committee will then be permitted to question the applicant or their agent. 3, the candidate or their agent may address the committee for no longer than 10 minutes. Members of the committee will then be permitted to question the candidate or their agent. Number 4, no other delegations are permitted. And 5, the committee will then deliberate in private on its decision on the application. On concluding its deliberations, the committee will return to an open meeting to advise whether it has reached a decision. Before we proceed, I'll ask that the applicant and candidate and or their agents please identify themselves. Applicant Gobinder Randhawa.
Good afternoon. My name is Vikram Singh. I'm appearing as agent for Gobinder Randhawa.
Very good, thank you. And candidate Nav Nanda.
Good afternoon. John Carlo Mastrangelo for candidate Nav Nanda.
Thank you both. As a preliminary matter, the committee must address and decide on the additional documentation that was received by the applicant after the filing deadline. These documents were not included in the formal record, the revised agenda, as both documents were received after the deadline and the procedures. The committee's clerk has advised that the following additional materials were received after the filing deadline. 1, addendum submissions from the applicant received on July 25th, 2023. 2, addendum submissions from the applicant received on July 28th, 2023. 3, a letter filed by the candidate from an individual to the candidate's lawyer dated July 31st, 2023. And lastly, a letter from the candidate's lawyer dated August 1st, 2023 with the subject line procedural fairness. The committee's clerk has also advised that these documents were also sent to the candidate and her agent. Pursuant to section 7.3.2 of the committee's administrative practices and procedures, the committee has discretion to decline to consider any documents or materials that were not filed in accordance with the filing deadline. The committee will be required to vote to either accept or reject the additional documents. Before the committee makes a decision on this matter, the committee would like to hear if either the applicant or the candidate have any submissions. So if the agent for the applicant wishes to address this particular matter now, you have 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Respected committee members, the letter of council dated August 1st essentially indicates that there's procedural unfairness with respect to the issue of the additional materials provided. He cites 2 cases. One is called Merck, the other is Bauer Hockey. I'd refer the committee to paragraph 5 of Merck, where the court can also consider or will also consider whether the proposed reply will serve the interests of justice, will assist the court to adjudicate on an issue on the merits. The second, I'd reference the committee to paragraph 29 of the Bauer decision. Council cites paragraph 13. I would ask the committee to look at paragraph 29, where the court indicates the following: I am prepared to exercise my discretion to admit the report in spite of potential breach of the rules regarding reply evidence. The court goes on, so I won't belabor that point. I just ask the committee to consider those 2 paragraphs in the cited decisions. With respect to the additional submissions, one of those submissions were filed, my understanding, prior to the noon deadline. The position of Mr. Randhawa is that that submission is an additional submission, not a responding submission. And the balance of the argument essentially is that pursuant to those 2 decisions, Merck and Bauer, it's the committee that has to ultimately weigh this matter. Are they relevant? Are they related? Does the information provided assist you in making a determination with respect to the ultimate question, which is that of to go ahead with a compliance audit or not? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now, if the agent for the candidate wishes to address the committee on this matter, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Our position is a simple one. And to assist the committee, the first 2 documents are additional submissions from the applicant, Mr. Randhawa. The latter 2 are letters, one from Ms. Nanda's campaign manager to me of yesterday's date. The second, a letter from me to the town clerk of today's date. And our position is that the submissions that Mr. Randhawa has made after the deadline and those made prior to the deadline go beyond the scope of the application. I'm not going to address those made within the deadline, but especially those after the deadline. They're novel. We haven't had an opportunity to respond to them. They attach correspondence with people who we haven't had the chance to investigate. And for that reason, it amounts to impermissible case splitting. Mr. Randhawa has had all the information he's needed to advance these allegations in his application or in the submissions that he made within the deadline. In our respectful submission, the committee should disregard those additional submissions, but if it is inclined to entertain them, the submissions that we've made of yesterday and today's date should also be included in the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the committee have any questions for either the agent for the candidate or the agent of the applicant at this time? Hearing none, is there any discussion from members of the committee on this matter? All right, I'm not hearing any, but I did have a question for our counsel. Could I get a motion to move into closed session for the purposes of receiving legal advice, please? I would need a mover and a seconder for that motion, please. Moved by, sorry. Amrita, you have your hand up, yeah. Moved by Amrita, seconded by Karen. All those in favor? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, do we have a separate link for an in-camera session or?
So we're going to use breakout rooms. I will be putting all committee members as well as the towns or the legal representative for the committee into a breakout room. And all the other parties will remain in the main meeting. So just give me one moment to set that up. You should get a prompt to join.
Okay, so if there is any additional discussion from the committee, you may do so now. If not, then we do need a motion on whether or not the committee will accept or decline the documents. So if there's any additional discussion, or if you wish to move a motion, please do so. Karen?
I'll make a motion to accept them.
I will second.
Okay, and just to read off the motion in full, moved by Karen, seconded by Zachary, that the additional documents submitted by the applicant on July 25th and July 28th, a letter filed by the candidate from an individual, the candidate's lawyer dated July 31st, and a letter from the candidate's lawyer dated August 1st, after the filing deadline, be received for consideration and included in the formal record. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll now move on to items for consideration, and I will now ask the applicant's agent to address the committee. You have 5 minutes, please.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, my computer has just frozen. If I can have just one moment, I apologize. All right. Mr. Chair, am I able to share my screen?
Madam Clerk, is that possible?
As a part of, if I click share screen, is that as a part of my talking points, is that okay?
Will it allow you to share your screen? Have you clicked it?
I didn't click it. I was waiting for maybe permission before I did that.
I have adjusted the settings. So you should be able to share now.
Okay, great.
Is it working for you?
I hope it's working. I'm not sure if it's
we can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair and respected members of the panel. I think the first question that we're going to ask ourselves is, why are we here and what triggers a compliance audit? The position is as follows. First, Mr. Malhotra's invoice, as the candidate submits through the council, invoice dated December 16th, 2022, an invoice itemizing certain services or goods provided. The position of Mr. Randawa is as follows. The candidate's website was live as of June 4th, based on the materials already submitted, which is a date-stamped literature drop. Mr. Malhotra's invoice indicates that services commenced on August of 2022. The question being raised there is, who prepared the website in May and who serviced it in June and July? Second, the invoice lists expenses related to a third-party site or a third-party vendor called clicksend.com and simpletexting.com. Raises questions about the completeness of the record, the cost of those phone numbers that submitted those text messages, and is it Mr. Malhotra who owned the accounts associated with those third-party vendors? The committee would be well served to see those bills in their entirety. That submits through council that Malhotra provided web hosting services. Web hosting is very different from web maintenance as illustrated in the invoice. Similarly, web hosting is different than web development. So what do we surmise from that? Well, there's a website, navnanda.ca, and in the initial submissions, Mr. Wendawa puts forward that Nation Builder Software is behind that website. Nation Builder Software is the same service used by Donald Trump in his 2016 presidential election. We are not talking about a small software. We're talking about a sophisticated enterprise in this election. There's no cost attributed to the design of the website, and there's no cost attributed to the creation of any promotional election videos. Phone and internet, there's a phone line, 905-617-NAV7, as indicated in the materials previously submitted. That phone number has a cost. It has a carrying cost and has a service cost. That phone number was also used in a prior 2018 election. There's no cost associated with the internet. The carrying cost of that phone, a value ought to have been assigned. October 8, breakfast vote. There are photographs published on social media with multiple individuals holding cups, filled in a garage, appears to be a garage, indicating that there are over 100 individuals present. And the candidate's submission is that the event was canceled. The submission is that at conservative basis, that approximately $500 or $570 would be attributed to the October 8th breakfast meeting. Boston Pizza campaign launch, the candidate in their social media calls it a campaign launch, has multiple speakers, there's AV equipment, there's presumably beverages served. The receipt provided does not indicate any beverages were served. There's a victory party, which Mr. Randawa submits, took place on October 24th. There is a number of individuals. Results are displayed on a digital screen. The position is that large of a party would have been booked in advance and is not reflected in the Form 4. There are $0 indicated for salaries. We take at face value the comments made by the young man. Notwithstanding the comments made, there's 320 hours volunteered. With those hours, there would be what's respectfully submitted, costs associated with internet, phone usage, campaign office costs. 320 hours is 40 hours a week for 8 weeks. What's respectfully submitted, there would be a cost associated with those 320 volunteer hours. Here's the conclusion. If you look at it in totality, there's website development, there is a Nation Builder software subscription cost, there is telephone and internet, whether it's home phone, and we have to remember, the NAV phone number that's cited is not the personal cell phone number. It's separate and apart. And we also have from the Malhotra invoice that there are, in fact, a text messaging service with phone numbers associated on that invoice. Now, it is vague, but those discrepancies can be clarified through a compliance audit. There's a breakfast and the vote, there's an election victory party, and there's costs associated with a campaign manager. our calculations that are being presented is that it's underreported by approximately $7,000, over $7,000. The candidate's position is that 13.7, so 13,700, give or take, is spent.
Mr. Singh, your 5 minutes has expired.
Very well. I thank the committee for their time in hearing, deliberating on this issue in the public interest, and it is a privilege to appear before this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. At this time, I will open the floor to members of the committee if you have any questions for the applicant's agent. And perhaps, Mr. Singh, if I could just ask you to stop sharing the screen, please.
Certainly.
Right, thank you. Questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Singh. I will now ask the agent for the candidate to present your position, and you have 10 minutes, please.
Good evening. Members of the committee, the overarching question before you today is whether it's in the public interest, looking at all the circumstances, to spend taxpayer dollars on an audit that will reveal no further information than what Ms. Nanda has already provided. You've seen from my written submission that we delivered on July 26th that the answer is no. There's nothing to be gained or to be uncovered by granting the application brought by the complainant because Ms. Nanda has disclosed everything already. Now, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'll begin with a preliminary issue, which I've raised in my letter to the town clerk on July 25th, which concerns the fact that, based on our information, the applicant, Mr. Randava, was not an eligible voter in the election in question, which is Ward 7, where Ms. Nanda sits as a town and regional councillor. In the materials provided to us, Mr. Randava's address was redacted, but we urge the committee to carefully review this and determine whether Mr. Randava was in fact and is in fact a Ward 7 resident with standing to bring this application. And that matters because if the answer is no, Mr. Randava had no right under the Municipal Elections Act to bring this application. And I'll direct the committee's attention to section 88.33 of the Municipal Elections Act 1996. The statute says that an application may be brought by an elector who is entitled to vote in an election and who believes on reasonable grounds that a candidate contravened the provisions of the legislation. In this case, Ms. Nanda was a candidate in the Ward 7 town and regional councillor race. Mr. Randava is the spouse of the campaign manager for Ms. Nanda's opponent, but he was not an eligible voter in that race based on our information because he did not reside in Ward 7. Members of the committee, if that is indeed the case, Mr. Randava does not have standing under the Municipal Elections Act to bring this application in the first place, and that alone is enough to dismiss the application as a matter of law. Even though our position is that Mr. Randava lacks standing, I'm going to spend my remaining time addressing each of the allegations that my friend raised during his submission today and in his written submissions. And I'm going to address them in sequence and respectfully submit that they are all without merit. The first is the Boston Pizza event. As I've explained, paragraphs 21 to 28 of my submission, the Boston Pizza event was disclosed in Ms. Nanda's Form 4 as a party and expression of interest, because that's what it was. It's consistent with the guidance from the provincial government's candidate guide, which is at Appendix E of my submission. Now, you've heard today that there was AV equipment on site. That was AV equipment at the Boston Pizza. It was made available to Ms. Nanda and is customarily made available to individuals who book events at the Boston Pizza free of charge. As part of the order that Ms. Nanda's campaign put through, the receipt for which you have at Appendix A of my submission, beverages, water, and pop are free. The second allegation that Mr. Randava makes is the breakfast and vote event on October 8th. I've addressed that at paragraphs 29 to 31 of my submission. In summary, there were no costs for that event because the event didn't take place. It was canceled the morning before it was scheduled to take place because there were no RSVPs from the public. Instead, Ms. Nanda invited some friends and family members to meet at her house and to head to the early voting polls together. In the photographs, there's no breakfast on the table. There are no coffees being served. This was a gathering of friends and family members to head out to the polls together. My friend has shown you the Instagram photos that were posted. Those were posted in error. The Instagram texts were written well in advance, again, as is customary in these types of situations. They were posted by a volunteer in error due to a miscommunication, and they were taken down as soon as the error was noticed. That's the beginning and end of the breakfast and vote event. There's nothing more about this that an audit will reveal. The third argument that Mr. Randava makes is that Ms. Nanda failed to report the salary or the honorarium of her campaign manager. You have the letter from the campaign manager, and you heard from my friend. He did it on a strictly volunteer basis, 320 community service hours. He won the Lieutenant Governor's Community Volunteer Award, and he's now going on to study political science at Queen's. Again, there's no merit to this claim. The fourth allegation that Mr. Randava makes regards website hosting costs. And you've heard about the costs that he says Nation Builder charges and the cost of setting up a website. I want to just orient the committee. This was a simple one-page website. It was designed by Ms. Nanda's children, who are tech savvy. It was posted in May of last year with no activity. And in August, when activity began, they started being billed, as is shown in Mr. Malhotra's invoice, for website maintenance and nothing more than website maintenance. The fifth argument that Mr. Randava makes concerns the internet and phone costs incurred by her and her volunteers. Respectfully, there's no merit whatsoever to this argument. The campaign did not have a dedicated office with a dedicated internet line. Instead, her and her volunteers used their existing home internet and their existing cell phones to send text messages, exchange emails, and prepare social media posts. There is no reasonable way for Ms. Nanda or for her campaign to track the incremental use of internet or personal cell phones. Nothing of this sort is required in the province's 2022 campaign guide, and there's no formula provided for how that should be done. And that's consistent with the guidance that we have from the Ontario Court of Justice, dealt with a similar argument in a case called Lyras and Heaps in 2008. There, the court rejected a similar argument, and they said, the decision that an audit of the costs of these lines, private phone lines, was unnecessary is reasonable, given the privacy interests at stake and the unrealistically onerous if not impossible, burden of determining different types of usage of what are essentially private lines. And just for the committee's assistance, this is at paragraph 34 of my submission. Going back to what the court said, in my view, the legislative intent is not to extend the ambit of the Municipal Elections Act to the privacy of home telephone lines of candidates for public office and their families. To hold otherwise would only lead to fishing expeditions, which could well deter persons from seeking public office. This passage is a complete answer to the internet and phone arguments because it imposes an unrealistic burden on those seeking public office. I'll make a final comment on the election night, which my friend characterizes as a campaign party. It was not. Ms. Nanda observes Diwali. It's a religious event that unfortunately coincided with election night. She was at the Boston Pizza with her family and friends, as she is entitled to do to celebrate a religious event. This was not a campaign event. Of all the social media posts that my friend has drawn your attention to, there is not a single invite to any such event because there was no event. After news of Ms. Nanda's election win was announced, people congratulated her. They texted her, "Where are you?" She said, "I'm out to dinner with my family." And they stopped in for a few minutes to congratulate her. As is the norm, there is nothing untoward about this. The campaign did not host anyone and did not incur any costs on behalf of any party of any sort. I'll end where I started. A campaign finance audit is intrusive, it's costly, and it's time-consuming. It ought to be reserved to cases where there are true, credible concerns of campaign finance irregularities and an intention to mislead. Not cases about negligible home internet usage or complaints regarding a disclosed event as being classified in the Form 4 as a party and not as a meeting. Mr. Randava has never reached out to Ms. Nanda's campaign to ask about these so-called discrepancies, and his complaints, respectfully, do nothing to advance the public interest. That I should submit should be the guiding principle to this committee in dismissing Mr. Randava's application in its entirety, and I welcome any questions the committee members may have.
Thank you very much. Does the committee members of the committee have any questions for Mr. Mastrangelo at this time? Amrita?
Thank you so much for that. Just one question I had. You mentioned that there were Instagram pictures related to a breakfast event, and it wasn't intended to be campaign related, and that they were removed upon discovering the error. Can you tell us when the photos were posted and then when they were taken down?
Yes, I understand that they were posted in and around the time the event was taking place by a volunteer. And my understanding was that they were removed shortly thereafter, as soon as they were discovered to have been posted, both because the event did not take place. There were not over 100 people who attended, as you can see from the photos, and because some of the people photographed didn't want their photos on social media. It was not removed. It was removed shortly after the event and certainly not at the time of filing the Form 4.
When you say shortly, are we talking days, weeks?
My understanding was we're in the realm of days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Zach?
Thanks for that. Just a couple of questions to clarify a few things for me. Just on the Instagram post, you mentioned that the text was prepared prior to the event and posted in error.
Yes.
I'm just curious how that happened, given that the photos were from the day, but the text was done ahead of time.
Yes.
Can you clarify the process there? I'm unclear.
Absolutely, Mr. Spicer. My understanding is, well, it's customary in these types of events to prepare text ahead of time so that the campaign is ready as things unfold and not worrying about drafting things as they go. And that was done in this instance. After the formal breakfast and vote event was canceled, A volunteer, I understand through miscommunication, didn't get the memo and had posted those photos in error. The decision to cancel the event was made by Miss Nanda and her close campaign, her campaign manager and others the night before, because they're the ones who had access to the RSVP events. And from what I gather, the message didn't filter down to the volunteer who posted it.
Okay. Thank you for that. I see Karen has her hand up. If you don't mind, just have one or two points to clarify quick. Sorry. On the matter of the campaign manager, you mentioned that the young man volunteered as part of his high school hours. In the letter, I mentioned that he has quite an extensive history volunteering in politics. I'm just curious if you can confirm to the best of your knowledge that he's never been paid for any of that work prior.
I don't know that to be the case. I understand that he has never been paid. If you would like me to confirm that, I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay, if it's at all possible.
Yep, I'm more than happy to do that. Let me just take that down.
Thanks. And just on the candidate's website, you mentioned that it was the candidate's children who prepared the website. You mentioned that they're tech savvy. I was just wondering if you could confirm to the best of your knowledge that they don't have they don't work professionally in web design or in any way, shape, or form in that field.
Yeah, yes, that is not the case. One second, Mr. They're 15 and 14 years of age.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Sorry, I just put my hand up to be in the queue. I just have a couple questions. You mentioned costs related to the maintenance of the website and the building. What costs were incurred as it relates to the hosting of it?
So I confess I am not a tech savvy person, and Ms. Nanda advises me that she is not either. These are the invoices that were put through from the person who handled this aspect. My understanding is that web maintenance is an all-in amount. And I can see if there's any clarification that I can provide, but my understanding is that website maintenance was sort of an all-in amount from Mr. Malhotra.
Okay, but the hosting, would he have been billed directly for the actual hosting on that platform?
I don't know. I confess I'm not tech savvy, so I'm not. I don't know the difference between maintenance and hosting. I'm happy to look into that and provide an answer to you.
Okay. And then just I think one of your comments had to do with whether, an amount that's negligible and the cost versus what's in the public interest. In terms of your position on that, could you tell me what you would then consider what is negligible and what that threshold should be?
Well, the negligible language comes from the court's decision in Lyris. You'll have that, and I'll just pull it up here at Appendix G of our submission. And that dealt with the incremental costs of home phones. What the court was looking for there was, what is the substantive amount that we were looking for? And whatever the usage on a home phone, home internet, in our case, this is an amount that's already being paid from the volunteers and the candidates. I would say the vast majority of people don't pay for their data or their internet by the gig. And so when I say negligible, I mean the cost of text messages or emails. It's impossible to track, and it's all inseparable, commingled with that person's ordinary and everyday use of their internet or their cell phone.
Okay, so then would it be, in your opinion, anything that isn't something that would be involved in a person's ordinary personal life, would be considered negligible, but perhaps like the hosting of a website would not be?
Well, I mean, again, I confess I'm not clear on the hosting versus maintenance distinction, but what I think we can do is we can draw guidance from the campaign finance rules, which say any contributions below $25 do not need to be recorded. That is in the campaign campaign guidelines. So when we're talking about negligible, I think we can draw an analogy to that and thinking, what is the intention of the legislature in the Municipal Elections Act? It is not to be tracking, I would say infinitesimally small amounts that really can't be separated from a person's ordinary day-to-day use of their cell phone or their internet.
So that's dealing with contributions, but do you see the same provisions as it relates to expenses?
No.
Services?
No, I raise that just as a matter of analogy to understand what's the legislature trying to achieve when they're requiring the reporting of contributions, and when they're providing the when they're recording expenses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Camille.
Thank you. Most of my questions have been answered, but I did have two others. One is concerning the Boston Pizza event, the initial one.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that there was free water and pop that was provided. Is that customary? I don't frequent Boston Pizza, so I'm not familiar with free pop, obviously free water, but is that customary?
Yeah, my understanding is that it's part of a party package that was purchased. So with a minimum number of pizzas and other things, water and soda are offered as part of the amount. And I think that it's recorded as part of that package, possibly under the open food amount. I'm not clear on that, but yes, it was not an additional line item.
Thank you. And revisiting Boston Pizza again at the for the event at the end of the campaign. You mentioned that it was a Diwali party as opposed to a campaign party or campaign event. I'm just wondering two things about that. One, was the campaign manager and volunteers from the campaign present there?
My understanding is that no external volunteers outside of Ms. Nanda's immediate family were present. The campaign manager, my understanding, was invited because he's a close family friend that had only grown closer during the campaign. But apart from that, my understanding is that there was no one outside of Ms. Nanda's immediate family who also volunteered, helped out with the campaign.
Thank you. And my last question just about that party is, in one of the photographs that the applicant had submitted, I believe it was in one of the late submissions, there does appear to be a picture, a campaign picture in the background. Do you have any comment on where, if that is a campaign picture at Boston Pizza that evening, campaign poster, sorry, and how it may have got there?
I mean, that is an excellent question. I'm just looking at the photo itself. It's not clear that this is even at the Boston Pizza, or that the next photo, the screenshot taken on the Preserve Indians looks to be a WhatsApp group. Doesn't appear that neither of them are linked at all to the Boston Pizza. I've asked Ms. Nanda if she knows where this was taken. She doesn't recall, but I certainly don't see anything from Boston Pizza on this.
Thank you for your answers.
Thanks, Camille. Are there any other members of the committee who wish to ask any questions at this time? Mr. Mastrangelo, then perhaps I do have one or two questions for you before we move on. The first one is, again, just going back to the website for a moment. You had indicated before that the Ms. Nanda's children had started the website in May, but obviously the invoice for the web maintenance only began on I think the earliest dates are sometime in August. So just to clarify again, whatever web hosting, presuming of course that this was not done, this is not a free social media, it's not some free blog site. I know Mr. Singh had indicated that it appeared that it was being hosted by a professional service provider for a website like this. To your knowledge, then there were no expenses to host this for the first 3 months this website was active.
Yeah, so just to be clear, and I'm sorry if I wasn't earlier, the website was not in fact active. It was not made live until August when the campaign began in earnest. So the website was designed, it was prepared, but it didn't actually go live at that point. And I'm told by the campaign just now that Mr. Malhotra's invoices for website and maintenance also include the cost of hosting.
Thank you. And just one more question. I take your point in regards to telephone and internet in general. Mr. Singh had raised a phone number that appeared to be specific to the campaign. Presuming that is not the candidate's personal cell phone number, home phone number, that presumably would have had a cost. Do you care to comment on that?
Yes, I can confirm that it is in fact Ms. Nanda's personal line. It is not a campaign line.
Okay, thank you. So with no additional questions then from the committee, thank you both for your presentations. The committee will now deliberate in private with legal counsel. Thank you. And Madam Clerk, if you can split us out again.
I'm going to reopen the breakout room, and please just look for an invitation to join on your screen. Thanks. an update. They are still deliberating and they need a few more minutes to work on their decision. It shouldn't be too much longer. We're getting there, but we are still in deliberation, so please hang tight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
They're almost done. I promise this time. They said maybe 10 more minutes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Madam Clerk.
the committee has had an opportunity now to deliberate on this matter in private and will now resume the public portion of this meeting. The committee will now call a vote on its decision in this matter. And I'll read out the motion here. Be it resolved that the Compliance Audit Committee grants the application for a compliance audit of the 2022 municipal election campaign finances of the NAV-NANDA pursuant to subsection 8833(7) of the Municipal Elections Act. And be it further resolved that the Compliance Audit Committee authority at the appointment of an auditor to conduct a compliance audit of the candidate's election campaign finances pursuant to subsection 8833(10) of the Municipal Elections Act. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that resolution, please?
Melissa, I so move.
Moved by
Zach.
Melissa.
Zach, I will second.
Seconded by Zachary. All those in favor? And the motion carries. I will now read the brief oral reasons for the decision of the committee this evening. The committee reached this decision because the candidate raised a threshold issue of whether the applicant has standing to bring the application based on the submission that subsection 8833(1 of the Municipal Elections Act should be interpreted as only allowing an elector from the candidate's ward to file the application. The candidate's agent did not refer the committee to any authority on this point. With a view to the plain and ordinary meaning of this provision in its entire context, and with a view to the important public purpose underlying the Municipal Elections Act, the candidate's interpretation cannot be accepted. Subsection 8833(1 of the Municipal Elections Act does not contain any limitation on requiring an elector to be a resident in a particular ward. The committee finds that the applicant is an eligible elector of the town of Oakville and as such had standing to make the application. The applicant raised an issue about the omission of expenses for web hosting services. The candidate's agent advised that the candidate's website was created in May 2022 by the candidate's children and was not activated until August 2022 when the campaign was formally launched. The candidate's agent also advised that the candidate's website was maintained by a professional, Mr. Malhotra, and that the candidate was only billed for this service starting in August 2022. The candidate's written reply produced an invoice from Mr. Malhotra for website maintenance services in his response submissions. On the face of the invoice, there are 5 entries for website maintenance services provided by Mr. Malhotra. The committee observes there are no costs for website hosting. The committee asked the candidate's agent what costs were incurred for website hosting. The candidate's agent advised that the invoice from Mr. Malhotra was an all-in amount. The committee also asked the candidate's agent whether Mr. Malhotra was billed directly for website hosting. The candidate's agent was unable to provide an answer, but advised that he would inquire and provide an answer. The candidate's agent later advised that the campaign understands that Mr. Malhotra's invoices included both website hosting and website maintenance. The committee does not accept the candidate's agent's submission that the committee should draw an analogy on the contribution rules pertaining cash donations under $25 not having to be reported. The total aggregate value of those contributions must still be reported in the financial statement. The committee is of the opinion that expenses related to website hosting were not accurately reported in the candidate's financial statement. This service was consumed by the campaign. However, based on the record before the committee, it appears that Mr. Malhotra was billed for those costs, but the candidate declared no related expense. This gives rise to reasonable probability that the candidate has contravened the campaign finance rules regarding the accurate reporting of campaign expenses and contributions. Written reasons for the committee's decision will be provided to the applicant and candidate in the coming days and will also be posted on the town's website. At this time, I'll now call for a motion to adjourn from the committee. I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn, please. Moved by Amrita, seconded by Karen. All those in favor? And the motion carries. This meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you, committee members.